Hey everybody, David Gordon from TheaterMania here. It's Tuesday, May 12th, and we are with Mr. Tom Kitt, composer of Next to Normal, If Then, Bring It On, one of my personal favorites, High Fidelity, Flying Over Sunset, which should be running now, orchestrator of even more things than I can remember, Jagged Little Pill, American Idiot. Hi, Tom.
How are you? Nice to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. Flying Over Sunset and The Visitor, which was your show at the Public Theater, should be running now.
Yes.
Sorry that they're not, obviously. I want to talk about those shows because right before the shutdown, I went to the junket for Flying Over Sunset. And what the few performances that the cast did were so interesting and beautiful, even in the rehearsal room. So I want to talk about that show and how long you've been working on that show.
When did we start working on that show? We started working on that show in 2015. I think that was our first public presentation work session at Vineyard Arts Project. It's a wonderful space up in Martha's Vineyard. And Michael, James, and I went up there. And so we did the first act that summer. We returned the following summer to do the entire thing. And then we've been workshopping it ever since. And thankfully, Andre Bishop was at that first presentation in 2015 and had been a fan of it and been checking in on it. And we did a workshop at Lincoln Center in April of 2019, I believe. And it was really successful. Suddenly the show had sort of taken a huge step forward. And at that point, it was programmed, and we were all just blown away that we were going to be at Lincoln Center, that the show was ready. So when you're working on something for a while and it's sort of going up and down and up and down, and you start to wonder when it will see the light of day. And thankfully that moment came sooner rather than later. And it really can't say enough about Lincoln Center, to be with Ira and Andre and the entire team. You walk in those hallways and see all those posters of the legendary shows. And
I wish everybody could walk through that hallway, because I love that hallway. With just every window, every full poster.
Yeah, all those big posters. And after I've been in the business a fair amount, but it's nice to have that feeling of I've arrived in a new way. It feels like this is telling me something about what I'm doing and where I'm at, and it just felt like a huge milestone to be there.
If you have questions for Tom about any of his shows, pop them into the comments. We'll get to them. So Flying Over Sunset is a show about Aldous Huxley, Claire Booth Luce, and Cary Grant and their experiences with LSD. Who comes to you with that idea?
That's James. James had been ruminating on this. He was fascinated with the history of it. And he called me one night and just mentioned the idea and mentioned that Michael Corey had been either in conversation or he was going to talk to Michael. And I'm a huge fan of Michael's and hadn't written with him before. So I just thought James is someone who really has spoken to me and inspired and influenced me from the days where I was in high school, wondering if this could ever be a dream I would realize. So the opportunity to get to collaborate by his side and learn from him was one I didn't want to pass up. And it's one of those subject matters that you think, okay, I don't have experience with this, but if of James's caliber thinks this could be a musical, and we know he's made a history of turning subject matters that you wouldn't necessarily think of into scintillating and groundbreaking musicals, then I just felt like regardless of what happens, this is going to be an experience I'll treasure, and it has been.
And you couldn't have a better cast.
Oh, the cast is wonderful, and I've learned so much from them, and then it was exciting to get into the theater and actually get to start seeing it up on its feet and see the design elements, because obviously there's so much in terms of the experience on the drug that was going to be enhanced by the design. So I'm sad that we got stopped when we did, when we were going to have an audience and get a sense of how it was working. But I'm glad that we at least got to tech it, and I have the memories of what the show was feeling like.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, everything is up in the air now, and I know Lincoln Center is committed to doing the project. So at least there's a silver lining for however long that takes.
Yeah. I think everyone's in the same boat, and especially when you've got something like Flying Over Sunset and The Visitor that already have moved into the spaces. The sets are there. Lincoln Center announced the show in the fall. I mean, I'm hopeful that will still happen. We'll see how things go over the summer and see what the schedule is, and whether things can happen in the fall. And The Visitor. The Public Theater obviously has many things on their schedule that they had planned, and they have to work out. Everyone's probably just in, okay, what are we doing now, and how do we ensure that we're protecting our institution? But these are brilliant, vibrant, and vital institutions that have huge support, and so I want to do my part just to help them weather this moment, and then I have confidence that we'll be back whenever it's safe to do so, and it's right with their schedules.
Yeah. One of the ways we weathered this moment in terms of watching theater at home was by watching Next to Normal on Friday night.
Oh, did you watch
from TheaterWorks Hartford, which sent around a link to one of their productions. It was a production from 2017. That you could sign up to get a link for. I don't think it's live anymore.
I watched it too, and it's beautiful, and it was wonderful to get to experience and experience with my kids. Hold on, I'm just gonna close the door. This is what happens when you get in your house. You get children walking around.
That's funny. Yeah, my wife is on the phone in the other room on a work call, so we're both.
So yeah, it's a beautiful production, and Next to Normal, something that obviously is extremely close, and it's always a privilege to get to see new artists breathe life into those characters and the material, and I just was blown away with it.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it was Rob Ruggiero that directed it, right? I believe so.
Oh.
Let me do a quick type of that, because I was going to say. We had seen I had seen the original production, of course.
Yes.
And then we went down in January to see it at the Kennedy Center, which Michael Greif also directed.
I saw that too. It was beautiful. Yeah.
And it was fascinating to see a new take on the show, a different take on the show.
Yeah. No, it's these things don't exist in a vacuum, so you want to see people breathe new life into them and put their own spin on it.
Do you like seek out productions of these shows? Like if you hear someone's doing a Next to Normal or a Bring It On somewhere, do you go see it?
I would love to. I mean, it's been so busy, over the past couple of years. If there was something close that I could see, I wish I had been able to go and see David Cromer's production of Next to Normal in Chicago.
Oh, me too.
David's so brilliant, and I was really curious to see what his take on it would be. It's also I'm interested in seeing productions of some of the shows that had a less clear cut debut. Something like If Then, for example.
Yeah.
I've been listening to a lot in quarantine. It's really spoken to me over these last weeks, and something I'm so proud of. It's a production that I would be curious because of the storytelling.
Right.
It would just be interesting to see what other people brought to the material, and or even something like High Fidelity that obviously didn't take on Broadway. But
the love of my life is that show. Is the love of my life. If everybody watching this doesn't know High Fidelity, just go out and look for the album and get it on iTunes or listen to it somewhere.
Thank you.
That score is my favorite.
And they've been wonderful, and even something like Superhero, which something that's very close to me and very personal, and wrote for my children. And that's another one I've been really investigating in this moment of some of the themes and the songs and how they're speaking to me now. So that's another one that I'd just be so curious to see what people brought to in terms of future productions.
It's funny you bring up If Then, because Map of New York is a song that I'm very particularly thinking about a lot these days, and just the themes of that song.
Yeah, the New York City that this character, so brilliantly played by Idina Menzel, she comes back to this city to rediscover herself. And being here now, you're just wondering, what is this city going to be? How soon can we get back that magic? I really hope it's soon. And you can feel people desperate for it.
Yeah. I'm going to pop up a question from a viewer. How exciting is it to work on a legendary album like American Idiot and Jagged Little Pill and create amazing arrangements for the theatrical versions of them?
Well, thank you for saying that they're amazing. I appreciate that. It's just it's a great privilege, and you're a fanboy, when someone says you get to work on Jagged Little Pill, American Idiot, Head Over Heels, because these are the artists that I grew up idolizing and who inspired me to want to become an artist in the first place. So the fact that I get to now add my name to the legend of Jagged Little Pill, and have spoken to that material in some way, and with Alanis's support, and this incredible creative team, and group of actors and designers and producers, it's just it's a real thrill, and obviously, the material is going to be recognizable from what you've done because everyone knows the album, so it's a lot of pressure. But I just think that it's again, I can think back to the memories of when I first heard that album and how Alanis first made me feel when I was in high school, hearing those songs, and how it was just a force of nature in the world. So I just feel like I get this great opportunity to meet these people, to soak in what they do in a personal way, and then get to just add my voice to this iconic material.
Can you talk a little bit about your process? So American Idiot exists as an album. Jagged Little Pill obviously exists as an album. All of the Go-Go's songs exist on various Go-Go's albums that are already, made for instrumentation for whatever members of the band there are that are playing on the album. How do you then take that, what already exists, and then sort of expand it or theatricalize it? And how much input did Alanis and Glenn or Billy Joe Armstrong or whoever have on your work?
They're part of the process the entire time. And whether they're on tour, in the studio, we're in constant communication, and sharing performances with them. If we did a presentation, we make sure that they can find a way to see it if they can't be there in person. And so we always have their input. For me, the process really is sort of breaking down the dramatic moment. So what is this moment asking for in the song? What is the character feeling? How is this building? Where is it starting from? And always using the recorded song as your template. That's the piano vocal music that I get in my mind. And then the question becomes, how does this fit into what we're doing with the show? And that's where I'll start to think, okay, this is going to need to be in another key. This is going to need to start smaller potentially. We're going to have to look at the form and see, if there's anything that we want to play with there. Just keeping the flow of the musical and also really defining the moment. And for me, I've never just wanted to do something to do it. Some of the things were created from me driving around in my car or sitting at home listening to the song and just adding what I call the harmonies. If you start harmonizing with a song just because there's a harmony that exists. And some of those harmonies in American Idiot and Jagged Little Pill came out of those moments where I just was was think, okay, there's two characters on stage. This harmony actually works and would be nice to hear. Some of them are bigger things, like You Ought to Know, for example, knowing that had to start from a place of real stillness and quiet rage, and then become much more driven and passionate as it was going. So that's where the arrangement and orchestration leads the way. But it's always about the moment and not about, oh, here's a little experiment that I can do. One thing I said to Billy Joe that he responded to early on was that I kind of see myself like a George Martin type, and George Martin's was a huge hero of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And, those Beatles songs are unrecognizable as Beatles songs, the Beatles compositions, but George Martin added a voice to it. So you hear that string quartet on Yesterday, or the orchestral work on I Am the Walrus. That to me becomes part of the fabric, but it still protects the composition and hopefully enhances them in some way when it needs to. And that's what I want to do for the theatrical versions of these songs, is find a way to add my voice. And that can mean just being able to match what we know on the record. And there are times where we do that in the show. And then there are times where we have to really embrace the adaptation.
Did you ever have a point working on any of these shows where you were like, oh, I've always wanted to hear, this song this way, so I'm finally going to do it for, Jagged Little Pill or Head Over Heels or something?
I don't know if it was ever, I want to hear it this way, so I'm going to do it. But something like What's Her Name, for example,
mm-hmm.
The last song in American Idiot, where again we had a big number end in the homecoming medley, and I called Michael Mayer and I just said, I think this wants to start smaller. I think we want to sort of pick ourselves up slowly from where we were. We want to have a moment of stillness with Johnny. And I said, what would you think about starting on piano with some strings? And he said, yeah, go for it. Not knowing what it would be and how it would feel. And it worked, and the band responded to it right away. So those kinds of things. I've always wanted to hear it this way, but
right.
As I'm thinking about it, this new direction might work for the moment, might really work for the musical that we're making. And just freeing myself up to think that way, and also knowing that if it didn't want to be that way, or if the artist had an issue with it, I would think of something else.
I feel like we're jumping ahead for people, and I want to go back a little bit and just pose the question that a lot of people don't know the answer to, which is, what are orchestrations and what are arrangements? And can you define in layman's terms for the people watching that see those words but don't know what they are?
Well, there are different kinds of arrangements, right? There are dance arrangements, there are vocal arrangements. When I use the term arrangement, I'm talking about an arrangement of a song. And it's more applicable for me in terms of the catalog musicals we've been talking about, Jagged Little Pill, Head Over Heels, American Idiot, because what you do is you take the song, SpongeBob's as well is another example. You take these songs as they are delivered and or how we know them, and then you arrange them for your musical. So I sit down at the piano and I work out a piano part that's going to speak to what the song is doing, and is going to underscore the emotions in the scene, in the dramatic moment. And figure out other voices. Is it a trio? Is it a duet? If it's a solo, but everything now works in cohesion to make this new version of the song, and it's arranged. So You Ought to Know, for example, all that stuff that you hear on stage was originally in a piano vocal. So I worked out the piano parts. I worked out the rhythmic nature of the left hand, which was going to become the bass and the percussion. I worked out lines in the right hand that were going to become the string lines. So really getting it down to its bare bones arranged form. And then once you have the arrangement and it's working in the score, then you can think about, okay, what is the instrumentation for this? And how are the instruments going to speak? And then you write out the specific parts for each instrument, and that becomes the orchestration.
Does it matter if you're No, I'm not going to ask it that way. I want to ask what you particularly enjoy more, like orchestrating or composing, or if you enjoy, you know, if one is, uh, you know, like if it's like you can't choose between your kids, you know what I mean?
I love them all. I mean, I think that composing, creating something completely new from the ground up, that's always been my dream occupation, to write original songs, and to write. I mean, then that could be anything. I'd love to write
Right.
something, no matter what. But certainly to create a musical score for the theater, and that's something that I think has my heart.
Yeah.
But looking over this past season, even though we didn't get to those places with The Visitor and Flying Over Sunset, we got close, and I worked on 3 shows, and I'm equally proud of all 3 of them. And they all took different parts of my heart and my voice, and my writing. The Visitor is very different from Flying Over Sunset, which is very different from Jagged Little Pill, but they all still have a piece of me that's very vital and important. And so everything. I look at all these shows as my shows.
Yeah.
I was able to add my voice to, but definitely, if there was something that I would gravitate to or say is the real thing that I probably get the most satisfaction out of, it's composing.
Did you get starstruck, or did you have a moment of like when you were like going into the pitch meetings for American Idiot and Jagged Little Pill? Did you like say, okay, like be cool, and then like have a freak out later, or at this point is it so second nature to you that?
No, it's a very controlled, quiet freak out. And because what happens is you have the meeting, and this possibility that you're going to be able to work with these artists and work on this material, and then you go home and you start to think of all of the memories of listening to those songs or seeing them on television, and then you start to get goosebumps that you're going to be in the same room with them, and then of course it's what would that first moment feel like? And with Green Day, it was when they first walked into the very first presentation we did. Alanis, it was a lunch. We had lunch, I believe, with her manager and Vivek Tiwari, who's one of our lead producers and was the one who actually brought the project to me, pitched me Jagged Little Pill. And with the Go-Go's, I believe it was that New York Station film when they first walked into the room, and it's just you're starstruck. You can't believe where you are. And then you settle down and you have a conversation with them, and hopefully they like what you're doing. And then what's great is then you start to talk to them. Just they're collaborators.
Yeah.
You have wonderful, thought-provoking conversations that spur new discoveries, and they have great questions, and no one knows better about their material than them. So I just want to be a sponge and learn as much as I can.
When you were working on Next to Normal and when you were working on If Then, if I'm correct, was written with Idina Menzel in mind,
Yes.
More or less, right?
Yes.
Was Next to Normal written with Alice in mind, or did she come into the project late?
She came to the project later on, but I had started to. Alice was actually one of the first Broadway stars that I got to meet and actually accompany.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be on stage with her. So I knew that voice very well, and it was always one that just stopped you in your tracks.
Yeah.
So when I would think of Diana and who could possibly play this role, who would I want to play this role at some point, Alice would always pop into my mind because of that voice, and it just conveyed so much emotion in so many ways, and so I just was curious if our paths might ever lead to one another at some point. We'd be able to experience the show together. So certainly when she first sang the songs, it felt very familiar to me, even though it was.
Was writing If Then with Brian Yorkie, your collaborator, a different experience then because you were writing for a star as opposed to Next to Normal? which you weren't writing particularly with one person in mind?
I think that certainly it's a different thing when you have a voice in mind than when you're just kind of writing without any thought of what that could be.
Yeah.
But having someone like Adina, who is so gifted and so versatile, it was the hugest boon and privilege. And I just got so excited every song that I was hearing her in my mind and couldn't wait to put on her and hear it in real time. And Adina is so collaborative and smart and passionate. So she was also incredibly helpful to the writing process, just giving us her own thoughts and feelings about how the material as it was unfolding. I don't think that necessarily one has, I mean, I think you're lucky if you have a sense of who you're writing for early on, because you can just really have a specificity about the score. And you also can get a quick sense of how it's feeling and sounding.
I'm going to leave you with the question that I'm going to pop up on the screen. Who would you like to collaborate with that you haven't done so already? I'm imagining that as who would you either like to write something with, or who would you like to have in, a revival of any of your shows? Maybe, I don't know. That's how I looked at that question.
Wow, who would I like to collaborate with? God, there are so many people in this business.
Lapine has to be pretty cool and terrifying all at the same time.
Just cool and wonderful. James we've played tennis. We've hung out. No, James is. I adore James. I mean, I think if I got to work with, if I got to write something for Audra McDonald.
Oh yeah,
that would be thrilling. And saying Audra's name, of course, spurs me on to a billion people in this business. But I can still remember seeing Carousel, in the 90s, and it's just so extraordinary. So that would be thrilling. I guess I would have to say, Billy Joel has been one of my heroes since I was 11 years old, 12 years old, Long Island piano player. Suddenly realized that I didn't have to just be learning classical. I could play Summer Highland Falls and New York State of Mind and all these great piano compositions. So if I was ever able to be in the room with Billy Joel and collaborate with him in some way, I think that would probably be the greatest dream.
I've been secreting a Moving Out revival for years, so maybe one day that'll happen.
I auditioned for that show.
Did you really?
Yeah, when they had the pianists.
Yeah.
There was that great Michael Cavanaugh who originated the show on Broadway and was up there playing all those songs. And I mean, I used to do that in my living room. So I was so desperate to get that role. But it was fun to just audition for the Broadway production. I didn't get too far, but for the tour, I got down to play with the band. I got to go to SIR Studio.
Oh, that's cool.
I remember playing Team from Italian Restaurant, and then suddenly the band came in. I was like, where did it come from? I'm so used to just doing this on my own. So even getting to that point was a thrill.
Tom, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, David. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. We're back tomorrow at 2 with Georgia Stitt. So everybody come on back and have a great afternoon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.